Brian here. I'm driving with ADHD. What I wanted to quickly talk about is why so many pieces of advice for people who have ADHD is so bad. I've heard it so many times. So typically, when you have ADHD, the advice tends to be about things like calendars and to-do lists and different systems like that. And you can tell pretty much right away when the person who's giving the advice, I know maybe it's a teacher, it could be a doctor, social worker, a friend. You can tell right away that that advice is coming from somebody who doesn't have a clue about what ADHD really feels like. So for example, things like review your to-do list every morning, then check things off at the end of the day. Not gonna happen. I'm sorry. Other things, like using certain apps and anything that really requires a lot of processing time, a lot of sort of like normal focus time. They're just not written, it's not designed for people with ADHD. So let me try to give you an example of what doesn't work and what could work. Okay. Just let's go old school, paper calendar. They still make them, or a planner. I can't tell you how many times I bought a damn planner, whether it's a nice big one with a leather cover or a small one. So I've done it both ways. Like, if I have the big one and my name on it, I'm not going to lose that. Well, if I have the small one and keep it in my pocket, I'm not going to lose that. I bought like a special pen for it. So excited, to do my planner, do my calendar, right? So what ends up happening? I either abandon it in the case of the big one, and I just feel bad about it, right? Because I just spent all that money. Or in the case of the little one, I lose it, like every time, Or I lose it, and then I find it like weeks later, and by then I'm already on to something else. So that's an example of what doesn't work for those with ADHD. Now, what does seem to work better, at least for me, is my phone. And choosing apps that also I can pull up on a laptop. Really simple example, the Google Calendar. It's just really straightforward. I can block out things in there. I can see it on my laptop. I could also print it, although I hardly ever do. It's really easy to navigate, and it's just a matter of training myself, I'd say twice a day, to look at it. So that works. It's very much like kind of present moment kind of thing. So if I'm going about my day, I work in a school, so we're very busy. I have a kind of like a in between a teaching and a school director kind of position. So I have a couple hard and fast rules for myself. One rule, and this is a classic ADHD mistake, guys, I will not say yes to any meeting until I look at my calendar. I just won't do it. Every time I've done that, I get burned. So that's one. The second hard and fast rule is to make sure that when I schedule things, that I actually look at my calendar later. So that one's pretty straightforward. I set an alarm, in my case, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, just to look at the calendar. So if you can train yourself to do that, that's huge. And then I do keep a separate to-do list, and I use Evernote for that, although that doesn't really matter. Again, in the phone, the Evernote works well, but you could use the native notes section of your phone. But I keep it simple. So what I'm talking about is two tools. The calendar, Google Calendar in my case, and then in the Evernote, just a basic to-do list. And I don't get too crazy about trying to be creative with them either. In fact, just kind of keep it boring and just make it a routine. So that's just one example. Other things that really don't work that I see a lot, when people are writing things, I would say long-term planning for people with ADHD is just a nightmare. And that's something where I just won't do it on my own. I'll really try to get what I call a thought partner, like somebody that I work with that will help me. to plan things way ahead of time. I just not good at doing that, and a lot of advice for people with ADHD is to try to do that, to like, plan like the 3 months ahead and then 6 months ahead, whatever. I can't do it. I just lose the train of thought after a while. I forget things. So if I have to do that type of what I would call like project planning, I'm going to get somebody to help me with that, and I sit as a partner, and then we bang out a project together. And I'm going to probably choose someone who's got that kind of mind for that, not like me. I'm more like in the present moment, right? Okay, so one more thing that does work. It's got a fancy name. You probably heard of it, the Pomodoro technique. It was named after the Italian word for tomato, Pomodoro. And some guy came up with it because he had this timer, like an old school kitchen timer that looked like a tomato. You put on your stove and you turn it. And what he learned is basically work in chunks. This is super awesome for those with ADHD. So work for 20 minutes, for example, set your timer. And now they've got all kinds of different electronic versions. Then get up and purposefully and intentionally take a break, like 3 to 5 minute break. And you can do different ratios. Like you could work for 15 minutes, take a 2-minute break. You could work for 30 minutes, take a 5-minute break. You'll find what works for you. I kind of landed on the magic ratio of I can work for about 25 minutes, super focused. Timer goes off. I get up and take about a 5-minute break. And when I'm really being disciplined, I'll even set the 5-minute timer too, and then come back to that 25-minute chunk. But I want to add on one more thing that really makes it good for those with ADHD. And this is just going to sound really silly, but after you complete a chunk of work, that 25 minutes, have what I call not a to-do list, but an accomplished list. This is like a little incentive. And it's really what it is. And you can put it at the bottom of your to-do list, or you could just annotate, your to-do list. But I put a little tiny tomato, and then I put what I got done. And I know that sounds silly, but that little tomato, which is, matches the concept of the Pomodoro, I see those filling up. Again, I have those in my Evernote. I can see these little red circles, and I know for each one of those that I accomplished 25 minutes of work. And I feel really good about that. And just that feeling of positive self-reward, it goes a long way, I think, for those who have ADHD, because we spend a lot of our lives really feeling like, we're not good enough, So seeing that list, that I call it an accomplished list, seeing that list grow and grow over time is awesome. It feels good. Also, it's a good record of what you've done. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I wrote that essay back in May, or I vacuumed my car last week, or whatever. And I just find the more you do that, you feel a sense of accomplishment growing and growing, and it's really, really good for your self-esteem. Okay, and then I'm going to end on one more thing. There is one place where you really can find an awesome collection of things that are great for those with ADHD, and that is Reddit. The internet's front page, I think, is the nickname for it, Reddit. If you don't know Reddit, Redditt, what it is, it's basically a huge collection of internet things, and there are these groups, and they're basically these subtopics of people in a forum supporting each other around all kinds of topics. The ADHD subreddit, the subtopic, is amazing. The people who write on that thing, they have some of the funniest interventions that they use with themselves. Tons of good advice on there, links to other things, but also just supportive. If you feel like ADHD is making you just feel horrible about yourself, you can write that on there, and people, they'll support you. You can make friends in a sense on that forum. So Reddit, the ADHD group, highly recommended. I joined it like 3 months ago, and I've learned just a lot. And it has a lot of funny stuff on there too. Okay, so thank you. This is my second video, and give me a like if you got something out of it. Thank you.